taxes, freeze my wages, send my only son. Oh, Claire de la Luna.
If I'd had my way, I'd have been a killer. Okay? That's true. I would have had guns, and I would have gone to the South and gave them violence for violence, shotgun for shotgun.
Why was Nina Simone called the most feared singer of her time? Was it because of her powerful voice or her fearless activism? How did her music inspire so many people while scaring others? Did her bold stand for civil rights make her a target?
If I'd had my way, I'd have been a killer. Okay? That's true. I would have had guns, and I would have gone to the South and gave them violence for violence, shotgun for shotgun.
What was it about Nina Simone that made her so unforgettable? Let's explore why she left such a strong mark on history.
I'm extraordinarily tender, and I'm very, very affectionate. And my first idea in the world has to do with me and my lover and romance. It's normal.
Nina Simone once said, "I want to be remembered as a diva from beginning to end, who never compromised in what she felt about racism and how the world should be, and who to the end of her days consistently stayed the same." She said this in an interview with Details magazine before her death in 2003 at the age of 70. These words show how deeply Nina believed in staying true to herself, no matter the cost. She wasn't just a talented singer, songwriter, and pianist. She was also a powerful voice in the civil rights movement, standing up against racism and injustice. This bravery came with a price, as her fight for equality affected her career. But Nina never backed down. As NPR's Mikkel Martin once said, she was more than an artist. She was a force for change.
If I'd had my way, I'd have been a killer. Okay? That's true. I would have had guns, and I would have gone to the South.
Born as Eunice Kathleen Wayman in Tryon, North Carolina, Nina grew up poor. She dreamed of becoming a classical pianist, but the world had other plans for her. Her amazing talent and her refusal to compromise led her to become one of the greatest artists and activists of the 20th century.
But my husband told me I didn't know anything about guns, and he refused to teach me. And the only thing I had was music, so I obeyed him. But if I'd had my way, darling, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I'd be probably...
Nina's life wasn't easy. She faced many personal struggles, but she never let them stop her. Her strength and courage shone through in her music and her actions. To this day, her story inspires people, and her songs remain timeless. Eunice Wayman, we later know her as Nina Simone, showed her amazing talent very early in life. Her parents were ministers, and her father also worked as a handyman to support the family. When Eunice was just 3 years old, she amazed everyone by playing an entire song on the piano. She had a natural gift for music and could play almost anything she heard by ear. A music teacher named Muriel Matsunovich, who had moved to Eunice's town of Tryon, noticed her talent. Muriel taught Eunice about classical music and helped her fall in love with great composers like Bach, Chopin, and Beethoven. Eunice worked hard to improve her skills.
Czarny and Liszt and Rachmaninoff and Bach, and I knew it was good. And we made records of it, but I didn't understand why I didn't get...
At just 11 years old, she was invited to play her first piano recital. It happened at the local library. This event was important, not just because it was her first big performance, but also because it was the first time Eunice faced racial injustice.
I played in churches and I studied. I did what they told me. So I didn't really know very much about that. We were poor, but I didn't know much about it. I knew it existed, but it didn't touch me. It touched me first time when I gave a concert, a recital at age 12, and they wanted to put my mom and daddy on the back row in the concert.
During the recital, her parents sat in the front row to watch her. But then they were asked to move to the back to make space for white audience members. Eunice was deeply hurt. She refused to play until her parents were allowed to sit back in the front. This moment changed her. She later said, "The skin grew back a little tougher, a little less innocent, and a little more black." It was one of the first steps in her journey to becoming a voice for justice, as well as a legendary musician.
Do things gradually, so will bring more
What most people don't know was that Nina didn't start out wanting to be a singer. Her real dream was to become a classical pianist. As a young girl, she loved playing the piano and learning classical music from her teacher. Singing wasn't part of her plan at all. Nina was very smart too.
Got in the show business. I wasn't a blues singer, and I wasn't even a love singer. I was a classical pianist.
Right.
So when I first got into show business, I only sang about love because I didn't have it.
In 1950, she graduated at the top of her high school class. The people in her town believed in her so much that they helped raise money to send her to a famous music school in New York City called the Juilliard School. She worked hard there, getting ready to audition for the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia. Her family even moved to Philadelphia, hoping she would get accepted. But when she auditioned, Nina wasn't chosen. She believed the rejection wasn't about her talent, but because of racism. This hurt her deeply, but it didn't stop her. She kept learning from a Curtis professor, but the school never let her in. Later, when Nina became famous, her music wasn't just about talent. It was about her fight for justice and equality.
Probably dead somewhere because I would have used guns during those years. I was never a nonviolent person.
While continuing to receive musical instruction, Nina worked a series of jobs. She worked for a time as a photographer's assistant, gave piano lessons, and, according to History Collection, worked as an accompanist on the piano for singing students. It was during this time that she began to take notice of her own voice, as she gave advice to the students on how best to perform to her accompaniment, realizing that, for the first time, she was making money from singing. According to a source she heard from one of her students that they were going to be playing piano in a local bar, earning $90 a week, double what she was earning. She realized it was a lucrative opportunity and quickly got herself a job for the summer of 1954 playing piano at the Midtown Bar and Grill in Atlantic City. However, she had a problem. Her mother would not approve of her performing in a bar. To her, it wouldn't be any different from working in the fires of hell, her autobiography claims. To avoid the prospect of her mother spotting the name Eunice Wayman on the bar's advertisements, Wayman created the stage name Nina Simone by combining the nickname her boyfriend at the time called her with the name of the French actress Simone Signoret. It was a name that would become famous as her star grew on the live music circuit. Simone began her music career in a very special way. At the Midtown Bar and Grill, the owner encouraged her not only to play the piano, but also to sing. She mixed popular songs with classical music, which made her first audiences love her. She worked hard, touring the East Coast to perfect her live performances, but no matter how busy she was, she returned to Philadelphia every week for her piano lessons with Vladimir Sokolov, her teacher. One day, the owner of Bethlehem Records, Sid Nathan, asked Nina to record an album. At that time, singers didn't usually get to choose the songs they recorded. But Nina was different. She insisted on picking all the songs for her album. She wasn't focused on becoming a famous singer. Her real dream was to be a classical musician, and she thought popular music was just a side job. In 1959, her album Little Girl Blue came out. It was a big success and helped her get more shows at top venues in New York. However, there was a downside. Without an agent or manager to guide her, Nina signed away the rights to the album for just $3,000. She didn't read the contract carefully, and later, when her song, My Baby Just Cares for Me, became a huge hit, she realized she had lost a fortune.
But secondly, I would love to be married. You know, I think I'll marry the cameraman over there.
Nina had a troubled marriage. I mean, the word tumultuous is commonly used to describe Nina, and the word is particularly apt when it comes to her love life. Simone was first married in 1958 to a jazz drummer and beatnik named Don Ross. In her autobiography, Simone claims that she is unable to remember the date of the marriage, a good indication of my feelings towards him. Though they moved to New York together to make the most of Simone's growing popularity, the marriage did not last long.
Be married, I have a man of my own, but that's second to my music. My music, nothing takes its place, nothing.
In 1961, Simone married Andrew Stroud, a Harlem police detective who had initially told Simone that he worked as a bank teller. In reality, stories abound that Stroud had once thrown someone from a Harlem roof. Simone remained married to Stroud through the 1960s, with her husband effectively becoming her manager and taking control of her financial affairs in their entirety.
The music got in the way. In the one where I married the cop from the United States, the music got in the way, and he treated me like a horse. You know, a nonstop workaholic horse.
Though it was Stroud who was responsible for organizing many of the tours throughout the 60s that helped to bring Simone's music around the world. Simone described him as the best manager I ever had, and my cop, for the way he helped to modify her impulsive behavior and calm her in her darker moments. It has been revealed in the years since their divorce in 1970 that he was also Simone's tormentor, treating her to years of physical and psychological distress, per NPR.
Unlucky at marriages, not so unlucky at love.
Lots of love, few marriages.
Yes, 2 marriages.
As the 1960s wore on, Nina became one of the most vocal and visible activists of the growing civil rights movement. The New Yorker points out the number of black intellectuals that the young Simone, still in her 20s, attracted in New York, such as Langston Hughes and James Baldwin. They helped to shape her thinking about race and politics. Nina claimed that the main topics of discussion with her friend Lorraine Hansberry were Marx, Lenin, and revolution. There were 2 incidents, however, that radicalized the young Simone forever, and which led her to create some of the most anthemic and iconic songs of the civil rights movement and imbue them with the anger and grief that permeate her greatest performances. The first was the murder in Jackson, Mississippi of Medgar Evers, a civil rights activist and Army veteran, on June 12, 1963. The second was the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing in Birmingham, Alabama, which occurred September 15th the same year, in which 4 girls were killed and dozens more seriously injured. Both of these atrocities were perpetrated by white supremacists.
We're sitting here today, I'd be probably dead somewhere because I would have used guns during those years. I was never a nonviolent person.
Nina's response, after being dissuaded by Stroud from arming herself and taking to the streets, shook up the world. Many people loved her, but some were scared of her too. Why? Because she didn't hold back. She said what needed to be said, even when it made people uncomfortable. Nina wasn't afraid of the truth. She sang about racism, freedom, and justice. Her song, "You Raise My Taxes, Freeze My Wages, and Send My Son to Vietnam." These lyrics to Nina Simone's classic protest song, Backlash Blues, give some indication of what Simone was thinking when she decided to resist paying taxes in the U.S. as a protest against the Vietnam War.
You raise my taxes, freeze my wages, send my only son.
Back then, while many singers avoided talking about race, Nina released this powerful song. Some radio stations refused to play her music because it made people think about things they didn't want to face. Nina's music wasn't just about the struggle, it was also about pride and hope. Songs like "To Be Young, Gifted, and Black" inspired Black people to feel good about themselves. Nina knew how to use her music to lift people up. She didn't just sing, she made people feel strong and proud, even in tough times. But being fearless came at a cost. Nina paid a big price for speaking her mind. Some people in the music industry turned their backs on her. She didn't get as many opportunities as other singers because she wouldn't stay silent. She also struggled with money and her mental health later in life. But Nina never gave up. She kept fighting for what she believed in. Many people didn't understand Nina Simone back then, but now she's seen as a legend. Nina made people feel things, whether it was anger, pride, or hope. That's why she was feared. She was bold, smart, and couldn't be controlled. According to antiwarsongs.org, it was the mounting pressure from the tax authorities, as well as the perceived racism and unfairness of record labels and promoters, that meant Simone left the U.S. in 1971, traveling and spending an extended period of time in Barbados, where she had an affair with Prime Minister Errol Barrow, and later spent time in Liberia. In the U.S., Simone had left behind her daughter, Lisa, her one child from her marriage to Andrew Stroud. In Liberia, mother and daughter were finally reunited, but Lisa suffered a great deal of physical and emotional mistreatment from Simone. "She went from being my comfort to being the monster in my life," Lisa later claimed. When my parents were together, my mother was more giving and open, but with the divorce, she turned into someone you didn't want to know. Lisa, aged just 14 at the time, left her mother in Liberia and returned to the US to live with her father in New York.
Et voici à présent Nina Simone.
Nina never trusted the American music industry or society. In the late 70s and early 80s, she decided to leave the US and live a wandering life, mostly in Europe. She performed at Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club in London and spent time in Switzerland before moving to Paris. In her autobiography, Nina said she loved Paris because it was busy and exciting. She also wanted to sing in French and perform songs by Jacques Brel. She felt French audiences respected serious artists and didn't expect her to make more commercial music. Even though she was a big name, Nina kept a low profile in Paris. She started performing at a small club called Les Trois Maillettes. This venue was no bigger than where she first sang in Atlantic City. Nina hoped her performances would attract attention and lead to bigger shows. She especially dreamed of singing at the famous Olympia Theater in Paris. But things didn't go as she planned. The large, loving audiences she was used to never showed up. In her autobiography, Nina admitted she was confused. She said, "All my life, no matter what personal problems I had, I could always draw a crowd.
Oh, Claire de la Lune. Oh, Claire de la Lune.
Paris, however, was different. Simone claims the reason she was unable to gain an audience there was because Parisians expect musicians to also live public star lifestyles, something Nina had eschewed in renting a small apartment and avoiding public appearances. She believed that because of this, many of her would-be French fans thought she was going through some sort of crisis and couldn't believe she was playing such small venues per entree to Black Paris. The pay was minuscule, $300 a show according to OZY, and Simone had to sell off all of her furniture and jewelry to make ends meet. As her mental health suffered and she slipped into alcoholism and depression, Simone worked less and less and was virtually penniless. Her friends, including her longtime guitarist Al Shackman, came to her aid. In the late 1990s, Nina became known for giving interviews that were funny, tough, and completely honest. She had a way of speaking that was sometimes sharp and sometimes full of humor. By then, Simone had made the south of France her home and did most of her interviews with American reporters over the phone. In 1997, she spoke with an American magazine called Details. When the interviewer mentioned a new release of her music from the 1960s, Simone said she had no idea about it. She even claimed that she didn't know about her renewed popularity in America at the time. The interviewer suggested, maybe if you lived in America instead of the south of France, you'd have more knowledge of your current popular resurgence here. At the age of 63, she seemed to be going through a personal comeback. She talked about a love affair she had with a Tunisian man the year before. She explained, "I had an intense love affair with a Tunisian boy last year, but I don't think I want to get involved for a long time again because he opened me up like a volcano and it almost put me under." Unfortunately, the relationship didn't last. Simone said part of the reason was because her lover had trouble settling in France due to his nationality. But she also told the BBC later on, "It lasted long enough for me to never forget it." Nina had a major fight with a record company executive. She accused him of stealing money from her royalties, and in a fit of anger, she fired a gun at him. Simone later said that she tried to kill him, but she missed. This incident showed how tense her relationship with the music industry had become. Simone had a lot of frustration, and she didn't hesitate to show it. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in the late 1980s. She was known for her temper and outbursts of aggression. In 1985, Simone fired a gun at a record company executive, whom she accused of stealing royalties. She said she tried to kill him, but missed. In 1995, while living in France, she shot and wounded her neighbor's son with an air gun after the boy's laughter disturbed her concentration, and she perceived his response to her complaints as racial insults. She was sentenced to 8 months in jail, which was suspended pending a psychiatric evaluation and treatment. Despite the difficulties in her personal life, Nina's music career had some bright moments. After taking a break from recording, she returned in 1978 with the album Baltimore. While it wasn't a big commercial hit, it marked a quiet comeback in her musical career. Her choice of songs continued to be diverse, including both spiritual songs and popular tracks like Hall & Oates' Rich Girl. In the 1980s, Nina performed regularly at Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club in London, recording a live album in 1984. She became more open with her audience, telling funny stories and even taking song requests. However, her personal life was still a struggle. Simone lived in different places like Liberia, Barbados, and Switzerland. She even lived in Paris, where she performed in small jazz clubs, sometimes giving up after just 15 minutes of performing. At times, she was too drunk to sing or play the piano properly, and she would scold the audience. A major turning point came in 1987 when Simone's old song, "My Baby Just Cares for Me," became a hit in Europe. It had been used in a Chanel No. 5 perfume commercial, which led to its re-release. The song became a hit, reaching number 4 on the UK's NME singles chart and bringing Simone back into the spotlight for a short time. In 1988, Simone moved to the Netherlands to relax and recover. She bought an apartment in Nijmegen with the help of a friend. A caretaker was hired to help her. Her life began to improve, and she even won a legal battle for money from the Chanel commercial. Simone moved to Amsterdam and lived there for 2 years. Though she faced many challenges throughout her life, she still found ways to fight through the tough times and make a comeback in her own way. Nina never did move back to the US. Biography states that Simone died April 21, 2003, at her home in Carré-le-Rouet, France. According to The New Yorker, she had been battling breast cancer for a number of years, but continued touring as a headliner as late as 2001 despite her illness. Her official website states that she passed away peacefully in her sleep. Nina was already a legend in her own lifetime, and the world mourned the loss of a tireless anti-racism and anti-war campaigner, as well as a prodigious, prolific, and singular talent. According to Simone's official website, her funeral was a huge event at which hundreds gathered, including her Miriam Makeba and Patti LaBelle, and to which Elton John sent flowers with the message, "You were the greatest and I love you." Simone left behind over 50 albums of material across a diverse range of genres and remains one of the towering figures of 20th century music and an icon of the civil rights movement.